All right. What I'm going to talk about today is site, how to model the site with roads and pathways and all those extra bits and pieces, and also how to calculate the amount of excavation and all the stuff that you need to do with the site. Because we only touched on this at the beginning of first semester, and Revit doesn't make your life easy when it comes to making roads and so on. It doesn't have a natural tool for it. You can add in, from the apps, you can add in something called Site Designer, but it's so complicated. It's so complicated that it's not worth it. It's worth your while actually just doing it with the tools you have. So there's a very simple way of doing it by using floor tools and all that kind of stuff, which gives you enough information so you can set up a site in 3D. So I'm going to start by starting a new architectural template here. And you can follow along with me if you want. But I'm going to go into the site view. And I'm just going to set up very quickly just the topography, just so we have a basis for it. So I'm going to go into Massing and Site, Topo Surface, and I'm just going to place 4 points, one there, one there, one there, and one there. So there we've got a site set up. And all these points are at elevation 0, 0. So we can add some levels to the site. So let's put in 3 meters. I'm going to put some more points along the top here at 3 meters. It starts to draw the contours for us. I'm going to put in some at 2 meters. So we got a site that's kind of sloping down like that. And let's put in some at 1 meter down the bottom here. Give it a bit more modeling. So then you have something like that. It doesn't matter what it looks like, but the important thing is is that you have some kind of level changes or whatever on the site like that. Does that make sense?
So far, so good.
So far, so good. Okay. So this is actually a good opportunity to introduce the idea of project phasing, because you can actually set up different stages for a project within Revit as well. So I'm just going to do it very simply here, where we can select any element that we've made in the project. And if you see over here on the right, we've got something called phasing. It says phase created, new construction, and phase demolished, none. Okay, so we want to change that from new construction, because you're not creating the world. Well, maybe you did, but that's a different story. We're creating something that's been there before the site, you found the site. So we're going to change that to existing. It doesn't do anything with the model itself, but now you can see that it's actually graded out a little bit, because it's within the existing phasing of the model. So now we have the opportunity to change the model, to model it according to our new design. So what we can do is make what's called a graded region. So what this does is it allows you to select the existing topography and modify it, based on what you're going to do with the site in the future. So what it's actually doing, it's going to create the exact same topo surface, but it's going to create it on a different phase. So we'll have both phases present in the project at the same time. So graded region, we get two options: create a new topo surface exactly like the existing one, or create a new topo surface based on perimeter points only. So it's giving us the option of copying it exactly or just making a completely flat topo surface that has the same outline. So I'm going to say create one exactly like the existing one. And then it says select a topographical surface for grading. So I'm going to select this one. And now it's actually made the topo surface under the phase at the right here, new construction. See what I mean? So we have one under existing and we have one under new construction. So now we could go in here and modify. Let's say we want this point to be at 2.5, for example, because that's what the design says. We want this point to be at 3 meters. Oops, not 300, 3 meters. Never mind. 3 meters. And that's enough. So then we accept that. Now let's just make this maximum. So now we have two topo surfaces in there, but in different time periods. So if I change the phase filter down here to show complete, at the moment it's showing new construction. I can change it to show existing, and you can see it changes back to the previous one as well. So we have two topo surfaces in there. One is the existing one we started with, and the other one is one we're creating under new construction. All right, make sense? The benefit of that is that when I select it, Revit automatically calculates the amount of excavation and the amount of fill that is going to be required in terms of cubic meters of earth. So that gives you a specific value that you can go and calculate how much it's going to cost to do that excavation, do that landscaping. So that's the reason for doing it in reality. Make sense? Yeah. All right. So that's the first thing. Okay, so the next thing is, now that we've kind of started modeling our site, we need to add some roads to it. And if I just press WT here and see what's on the screen, we've got a 3D view over here, and we've got the plan view over here. So when you're drawing roads on a site, or when you're drawing a site layout, it's much easier to start sketching it with 2D lines first of all, because 3D is just too complicated. So you really want to figure out where you want to put it first of all. So the way I always do it is I use the annotate button. Now you can either use detail line here, or you can use the shortcut, which is DL, and you can see that opens up these sketching tools up here. And let's say we wanted to draw a big road going from here to here, and then we want to draw a road that kind of intersects it from here to here. And then we can draw a road just slightly at an angle from here to here. So all I'm doing is kind of setting up the overall idea of where I want the roads to be. I'm not being too exact about it. And you notice that it's only showing in the ground floor plan, or the site plan here. It's not showing in the 3D view because we're using an annotate line. So that allows us just to do some sketches without it actually affecting the 3D model. Okay? So now we want to add some kind of realism to these lines here. So this is where you look at Neufert's, or you look at the local requirements for the area, where they tell you how wide the roads have to be. And it's usually you have something along the lines of 5.5 to 6 meters for a residential road, and then maybe 10 meters for a main carriageway within a residential estate. So let's just use those figures right now. But it is specific to whatever area you're working in, so you need to use the local standards. But let's say we're going to make this a wide road. We're going to make this 10 meters wide, and we're going to make these two 6 meter wide roads because they're leading into housing areas. So we just want to set it up so it's the right dimensions first of all. So I'm going to click on this line we just made. Whoops, click on it. Let's just maximize this actually. So I've selected the line here. Now I'm going to use the offset tool. So press offset. And in here we can just decide how far away we want to offset it. Parallel. So I'm going to change it to 5 meters, and I can select the line. You can see it's offsetting to the top, and if I move the cursor down slightly, it offsets to the bottom. So now we have a center line for the road, and we have 5 meters on one side and 5 meters on the other side. Okay, simple enough. Let's do the same thing again with the two 6 meter roads here. So let's change the offset value to 3 meters. Change it to here. Click it there, click it here, click it there. Make sense? Yeah? Everybody with me? Just scream if you're not. Okay, so now we've got the basic layout. We know where it's going to be, and it's actually given us the proper positioning. So I want to also add, let's say, a sidewalk, a pathway along the side. So I'm just going to use the same thing again, and we'll make the pathway 1200 millimeters wide. So we'll just offset it here, and offset it here, 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 and here. And of course you can use the offset tool to make a cycle track, or maybe a grass verge, or whatever is required for the area that you're in. You can just use the offset tool. So now we've kind of sketched out the position of the various roads that we have in there. The next thing we need to do is to deal with the turning circles, because you have requirements for the curve that you use to turn your car or to turn your ambulance or your garbage truck or whatever, they all have requirements for a turning circle, which also is in Neufert's or any architectural data book that you can find. So I'm going to put those radii in here. So the first thing I want to do, I'm going to break these lines to allow us to draw those curves here. So I use this little split element button up here. Split element. So I'm going to just split this line here, and I'm going to split this line here like that. So if I select it now, you can see it's only selecting this half of the line. So now it's ready, so we can put a radius in there. And we use the same tool again, DL, which is detail line, which is also, it's just a shortcut to annotate detail line. So DL. And this time, instead of drawing a straight line, I'm going to use this one here, which is called fillet arc. And you can see what that does there. It just curves any, orthogonal lines to whatever radius you want to set it to. So I'm going to come over here, and we're going to select it, and we're going to select radius, so we can type in the radius. And I'm going to choose, for the first one, I'm going to choose the 6 meter radius, say 6 meters. So now I'm going to choose the edge of the road, not the edge of the pathway, but the edge of the road, because that's where the car or the truck is going to be turning, and that's where we need to set up the radius. So I'm going to choose the edge of the road here, and the edge of the road here, and it draws that 6 meter radius for us. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, here and here. So now we've got a 6 meter radius on both sides of the road. All we need to do now is get the path to follow the line of the curve, and again we just use the offset tool. Offset, it's already set to 1200, so we can just offset it and offset it. Then afterwards we can use the trim tool to trim the lines so that it kind of tidies everything up for us like that. Does that make sense? Blank faces. Okay, tell you what, I'll do the same trick again over here. So first thing we do is we break the line. So I'm going to use this one. Break these two lines. I press escape out of that. Press DL for detail line. Choose the fillet arc. This time I'm going to use a 10 meter radius, just because maybe this road is being used for another type of traffic. 10 meters. Choose the inner or the edge of the road rather than the edge of the pathway, and then use the offset tool to offset at the correct distance, and the trim tool to trim it together like that. Yeah.
How we can define excavation?
That's the next step. So this is just a sketch. So if you start doing in 3D, then it gets very confusing. So this is just to have some kind of outline to start with, and then we worry about the 3D afterwards. Okay. So if I go and press WT again, you can see that the 3D view is showing nothing, because the lines that I'm using are just they only exist in this particular view here because they're just annotation lines. And you can use architectural lines as well if you want, which is model lines here, but they will turn up in the 3D view as well. And you don't necessarily want them to be in the 3D view because why would you? Because you're going to make it in 3D anyway. So is everybody with me in this far? Anyway, yeah. Am I still? Just check I'm recording. Yeah, okay. Okay, so now we want to turn it into a three-dimensional element. What we're doing here. So because Revit is always about construction, you need to give everything a base level, to set it on. So I'm going to go into the elevation view here, and let's delete this. I'm just going to copy a level down. Let's take this level here. I'm going to copy it down to here, let's say. And then I'm going to rename it, and I'm just going to call it road base. And this is just to give us a level to draw the road off. We know the road is going to go up and down based on the landscape, but we need to have a base level that we're going to put it on. So road base. So then if I go back, I'm going to shut that down again. So as with everything when you're dealing with landscape, first thing you do is you go to Masking Insight, and we need to make a building pad, because we need to cut out the area of site first of all that we want to use for the road. So we can't just start making a road in there. We need to actually cut out the landscape first of all. So I'm going to make a building pad. Because we've already worked out the sketch that we have, we don't need to draw it again. We can just use this pick lines tool here. So I'm going to say pick lines, and I'm just going to go around and pick all the edges of the road that I've just kind of outlined. Like that. And then of course we need to close it. So I'm just going to use the line tool, and it needs to be inside the topography always. So I'm just going to draw a line here, and a line here, here, whoops. Let's make it straight just so it's nice and neat. And another one over here. And then we use the trim tool just to trim the edges, like you always do when you're dealing with these profiles. Okay, so you'd end up with something like that before you do anything with it. Then I'm just going to make sure that we put it on the right level. Going to put it on road base. And accept it. And now if I show the 3D view, you can see that it's cut the shape of the road out of the topography like that. Yeah? Sleepy class. Okay, so now we have, it's kind of, you think about it, the excavation has now been performed to start the road construction. So now we need to start putting in the materials of the road, and there's a couple of different ways to do that, but the simplest way for the type of work we do in the school here is just to use the floor tool. You can basically just make a floor that has the layers that you need in the road. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into architecture, floor, architectural, and we'll just choose, what do they got in here? Let's just choose the generic ground, edit the type, duplicate it, and let's call it road. Okay. So now let's edit the structure of the road. So the first thing we need is, I'm going to insert two layers. I want to have two layers in there because I want to have an asphalt layer that follows the line of the road as it goes up and down, and I want to have a layer underneath that just varies to take account of the changes in height and so on. I'll show you what I mean in a second. So the top one here, I'm going to call finish 1, and I'm going to turn that into asphalt. Asphalt bitumen. No, let's leave it a bit light. Let's just make it a bit lighter because it's a little bit too dark. Okay, and I'm just going to make that 140 thick. I'm not sure how thick it should be, but that's down to the guy who makes the roads. And it's not going to be a structural material, so I'll switch that off. And the next thing is I'm going to make the structural material into just kind of gravel or something. It's not too important because it's just setting it up to start with. Gravel, here we go, gravel. User under appearance. Okay. I'm going to give it a thickness of 100 just so it has a thickness. You need to give it some kind of thickness. But the important thing I'm doing here is where it says variable over here, I'm going to click that on. So that means when we change the slope of the floor, the asphalt layer is going to maintain its 150 millimeters, but the structural layer of gravel underneath is going to modify. It's going to get thicker and it's going to get shallower as we move it around. Okay, so this is important. You switch that on variable. That's okay. And okay. So now we have it set up here, ready to use. I'm going to put it on the right level first of all, road base. And again, since we've already drawn the sketch, you can see how useful it is to draw this sketch, because now I can use the same tool again to pick the edges of the road we're making. So here, here, here. You need to go through the same process again. Go around, just pick all the edges that we want to use. Like that. So that looks okay, so just accept it. And if I press WT again, let's switch on the shaded view and see what it looks like. We have it there. It's at the same level as the building pad actually, so let's just select it again. Select the pad. I'm going to offset the pad by -300. And then hopefully, yeah, we can select the you can select the road. Yeah, so the road's in there. Does that make sense? So now we've got a flat floor that's acting as the road. So the next thing we need to do is to be able to control the slopes. So we want it to be able to maybe bring the slope up to whatever we want it to be at each individual point. So I just have an easy technique to do that, so you don't have to get into too complicated things. Basically, if I leave this arrow over the where the edge of the road is, and I just press tab until the bottom left corner, it selects the road. So there it is there. We get these controls up here. And these are controls for modifying the sub-elements or the actual levels within the floor itself. So I'm going to select Add Split Line, and this is going to split the floor or the road as it is into different elements that we can move around independently. I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to draw a split line at each junction, because you usually don't want there to be a serious slope at a junction if you possibly can avoid it. So let's do that first of all. I'm going to put one here, and one here. So let's just maximize the 3D view again. So you can see these split lines. So now we can go around, and if I just escape, I can select these ones here, for example, and over here I get an elevation. So I can change this elevation to, let's say, 2 meters, and it moves the entire junction up to that 2 meter level that we want it to be. This one over here, maybe it's something different. Let's just say it's I don't know, 2.5 or something, 2500, slightly higher. And we could select this one here. We can bring that up, I don't know, 600. So you can always go around then and play with the heights of these individual points by modifying the sub-elements of the floor. So let's bring this one up to 3500, for example. But because we made a split line in there, the junction point always remains completely flat. Make sense? Yeah, okay. So what it's doing is it's varying the thickness of the floor we made. If I select it now, and oh no, I go down here. Let's have a look. Let's go down to isolate element. It's modifying the thickness of the floor, but it's the layer of asphalt is being continuous because it's not a variable layer, whereas the layer of gravel is being modified as I change the levels. So you end up with something like that. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's lots of flat sections now.
Yeah.
A road is usually.
So now we have the road set up in its overall basis. But if I go back into the the plan view here, you can see we still have this sidewalk, this pathway here that we need to set up. We want to set up in 3D, and we don't want to have to go through the same process again because it's kind of a painful process. You just want to do it once and then use that for the basis of everything else. So the easy way to do it is to make a component, and just like when we were making kitchen tabletops and all that kind of stuff, we just make a component and we use a metric profile, just like we do when we're trying to make everything else that runs in one that runs along a route. So I'm going to go into New Family, English, and down to metric profile, the favorite template we have, metric profile. Open. Because we drew the asphalt all the way to the edge, the inner edge of the pathway, I'm going to make it coming out this way. So I'm going to make a path. So let's just make a line. I'm going to make a simple path, a rectangle. I'll bring it out. Let's say just select it there. Let's select this. Let's make it 160 high, and we'll make it 1200 wide. And that's basically the profile of our sidewalk. Save it on the desktop. Save as family. Let's call it sidewalk. And then we can load it into the project. So now we have, that's not what I want. So now we have the sidewalk profile loaded in here. So we can go into component, model in place, choose a category of site 1, fine. And I'm going to use this one here called sweep, because with a sweep you choose a pathway and then you assign a profile to it and then it makes the shape you want. So I choose sweep, pick the path. So I'm going to start by picking the edge of the road we've made, like this. Let's just do that one first of all. You can only do it one at a time. Now we'll be able to select the sidewalk that we've just loaded in there. And if we zoom in, you can see that it comes in. It's coming in at a funny angle here. So let's change it to -90. And we can flip it then to the other side. So now it's in the right position. Once we get it in the right position, we can give it a material or whatever, or we can just accept it. And now it's drawn the pathway along one side for us like that. But you can see that it's followed the angles of the level changes that we put in the road before. So we don't have to do that work again. It just follows them automatically. So let's just do that process again. Let's do the big one over here. Say yes to that one. Finish the model. Do it again. Architecture, component, model in place, site. Okay. Make a sweep. Pick the path. Choose the edges of the road. Right around the corner, up like that. Accept it. Choose the profile we want, and last time it was -90 and it was flipped. So that looks right. Accept it. Finish the model. So you can see that you can quickly set up kind of accurate pathways that always follow the edge of the road you need. Okay. The last thing we can do with that, I can continue and add all the pathways around there. But you can see that once we do that, once we've set up the levels of the roads that we want, the topography doesn't necessarily follow the edge of it. But that's the reason why we've set up two topographies. So we have the original in there, and if I select this one, this is the one at new construction. So I can then modify this one, for example. The easy way to do it, first of all, actually, is to go into the site view, and we can figure out what this level is by going to annotate, spot elevation, just make it into a plan project. and we can see that's at 2.9. And actually, while I'm here, you can. This is what I would recommend you to do anytime you do a site plan. Is once you set up the 3D elements, you can put in the spot elevation wherever it's required, like that. And what we can also do is put in a radial diameter. So then you can accurately set up your site drawings so that somebody knows exactly what they're doing when they get on site, and they can see how that works out. Let's just change that to 1:50. No, not 1:50. 1:200, so it's easily readable. So you should have at least radiuses, radii, and dimensions. Like that on your road layout. So that kind of looks like that's enough information to set up a basic road. We got the widths of the road, widths of the pathway, the radiuses, and the levels. So now that's at 2.9, and this one's at 2.4. So if we go back into the 3D view, we should be able to modify the surface, and we can place some points in there at 2.9. Let's say, probably best to do it in a kind of a plan view. You know, so it fills in the change in levels. Maybe you have to play with it a little bit. Change that one to 2.7. Change this one to 2.7 or 2.6 even. So you can kind of play with the landscape until it starts to look like, you know, what you want it to be. And as you're doing that, if I accept that, it modifies, if I select it here, it modifies the amount of material that's been used in there. So it's comparing the new topography with the previous topography, and calculating how much has been cut out of it and how much has been filled in as well. So you can make a calculation as to the landscaping of it. Okay, so when you're finished, you end up with a model. Of course, you can then put your building paths for your individual houses or whatever on that. But you have a model with some roads that are editable. Let's change that to 3.3. Oops. 3.3. And let's just see if that works. Yeah, I think you need to redo the, if you modify the levels, you need to redo the path afterwards. So that's one thing it doesn't do for you. So you need to figure out that first of all. And you should end up with, a fairly concise plan full of decent dimensions and so forth in there. We can also put a spot slope on there, so it'll calculate for us. That's 2.68 degrees, that hill there. This is 1.18 degrees. What's that? 64. So all this information you only have to put in once, and then you can just, send it out. Afterwards, we can just delete the guidelines that we had at the beginning. And that's it. Any questions? Yeah?
Question.
Yeah.
When you're drawing a boundary line,
Yeah.
for example, building cut or something, is there a tool in Revit which closing your lines? So like I get an error message that somewhere I didn't close my lines and I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
Is there a way how
No.
it's like everything?
No.
Good, very good.